Hello, guys, and welcome to the Penny Podcast. My name is Meer Mahfuz, and I'm in 10th grade, and I'm a staff writer.
I'm Joanne Kim. I'm in 10th grade and I'm a staff writer.
I'm Sally Parampottil. I'm in 11th grade and I'm the executive sports editor.
And I'm Victoria Hertel. I'm in 11th grade and I'm a staff writer.
If this is your first time tuning into the Penny Podcast, the Penny Podcast is a weekly podcast that incorporates entertainment and discussion elements. Please excuse our sound quality as we are recording this episode through Zoom.
This week, our CSM highlight goes to Nishant Metacharla for his article, Cancellation of Prom May Have Taught Us Something More Valuable, Living in the Moment, published under our opinion section. I'll recite the opening to his article. The clock struck midnight as I was scrolling through Instagram, liking all the prom pictures my upperclassmen were posting. The scary thoughts of the SAT and the next day's calculus test dwindled away as I imagined a night where I could celebrate 4 years' worth of hard work. But one email destroyed the picturesque scene of the fantasy-filled night. To read the rest of Metacharla's article, visit coppellstudentmedia.com.
This week on One Shot, each of us will explain their current relationship with literature. I'll go first. Personally, I have a very strong relationship with literature. I've always enjoyed reading since I was very young. I think, if you imagine the kids on the playground, you know how most people would be playing on the monkey bars or on the swings. I'd be that one kid on the sideline who's has their nose in a book every day, and the teacher was so concerned about me, but I turned out fine. So I'd say my relationship with literature is a good one. What about you, Sally?
My relationship with literature is also very strong. It did take a lull in recent years because I just haven't had enough time to read what I wanted to read. But now, because of all the extra time I have, I've been able to get back into things. Right now on my nightstand, I've got 2 books. I have Gone with the Wind, and I've only read 2 pages of that. And I have the one that I'm currently reading, American Lion, which is an Andrew Jackson biography by my favorite biographer, John Meacham. Victoria?
Well, I read books a lot, and I'm actually reading The Shining right now, which is basically about this boy named Danny who moves to the Overlook Hotel, which is basically in Estes Park, Colorado, and a bunch of scary stuff starts happening there. So I don't usually read poems, though. So yeah. And you, Meer?
My relationship with literature is not nearly as strong as y'all's. I've never really liked reading. I just did it if I had to. But sometimes I'll come across an interesting poem or an interesting book about something I like. So I'll give that a read occasionally.
Speaking of literature, today's Penny podcast discussion will be a celebration of National Poetry Month. Inspired by the success of Black History Month in February and Women's History Month in March. The American Poetry Association created National Poetry Month in 1996 in order to promote the form of literature and its writers. Now, each of us will present a poem that means something to us, and we'll discuss it as a group. First off is Joanne.
I'll be reading Ozymandias by Percy Bysshe Shelley. It's a poem that I really enjoyed since middle school, I think. Surprisingly, after I analyzed it in the English class because I thought it had a really good meaning. So here goes. I met a traveler from an antique land who said, 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare. The lone and level sands stretch far away. So, what do you guys think the poem is trying to imply about power, I guess?
Well, I mean, if it's a guy who so he had everything and then he had nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like saying don't take what you have for granted. just live life, like don't wait. Mm, like don't if you have money and like power, don't use it to like don't abuse it. Like, you know what I mean?
That's actually a lot more positive than what I thought it meant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you interpret it way more positively. Mine was more like money and power don't matter at all because eventually you're gonna lose it all. So focus on what matters is how I thought it was. But I think I
Yeah.
like yours better.
So take it in the way of how your legacy is, like what your place in history is, because you can't see what this guy's kingdom used to look like and what he had when he was still alive. What you have left of him and the memory you have of him is just a statue, and that statue, what has a wrinkled lip and a sneer of cold command. So it's how you're portrayed in history, and then that's just kind of the image that you're stuck with.
Anybody have questions? Or I'm just gonna
How do you
segue.
pronounce that guy's middle name?
Bish? Oh god, it's gonna sound weird. I promise I'm not swearing. Okay, but anyways, what about you, Sally? What's your poem?
My poem?
Mhm.
I chose The Highwayman by Alfred Noyes. I'm not going to read the full thing because it's a bit long, but I do have an excerpt. Here it goes. He turned. He spurred to the west. He did not know who stood, bowed, with her head over the musket, drenched with her own blood. Not till the dawn he heard it, and his face grew gray to hear how Bess, the landlord's daughter, the landlord's black-eyed daughter, had watched for her love in the moonlight and had died in the darkness there. Now, I suppose I should give a spoiler warning, I guess, for this poem if you haven't already read it because it is a narrative poem. But a summary is basically the landlord's daughter, Bess, and a highwayman fell in love. Then someone tattled on him because highwaymen, I don't know if you guys know what those are, but they were kind of like midnight robbers. They would just kind of like rob people in their carriages when they're traveling. And so, I mean, it was illegal. And so someone tattled on them. So all the king's men came and they tied up Bess, the landlord's daughter. So when the highwayman came, they could like shoot him dead. And so what happened was the landlord's daughter shot herself to warn the highwayman as he was approaching that they were like, you know, people there to kill him. So he ran off and then he kind of ran back. From what I understood, he found out that it was Bess who died and he got like really wildly upset. And then he just kind of went sort of crazy and then he got shot as well. So they both died. So
No.
yeah, it's a sad story. But one of my questions that I wanted to ask is what are you guys' thoughts on narrative poems compared to descriptive poems? Because The Highwayman is a narrative poem, it tells a story, but there are other poems that are just there mostly to describe things. Like they use very flowery language to describe certain things. So what are your thoughts on which one's better to read, better to write, anything like that?
So by descriptive poems, I think what you're trying to say is like literally anything that's not like telling a whole story,
Mhm.
right? Okay. Personally, I prefer writing descriptive poems just because I'm not that great with coming up with narratives. But in terms of reading, I definitely prefer the narrative ones just because it's more of a story, I guess, and it's fun to read.
Yeah, I agree because like narratives more like books or like a story, but like descriptive, you could like write down your feelings and stuff like that. So,
I think it depends on what the writer is trying to say. If they want to create like a storyline that's very like followable, then narrative is the way to go. But if they're describing a personal experience, then I think uh, descriptive poems are very good at describing what they're trying to say and describing how they feel towards something. But I like reading both equally because they're both equally as interesting.
Yeah, I personally like reading narrative and writing descriptive, but I do think there are a lot of descriptive poems that just turn out absolutely amazing. Like because they describe more of I like if it's not a narrative, and it's descriptive. It's mainly going off of ideas or concepts. So like the concept of life and the concept of death, and that's what they're describing. And poems are just so or like people who write poems are very talented in that they can use certain words and certain styles and formats to create a visual image without actually making a physical image. And I think that's absolutely amazing. So while I love narrative poems, like Casey at Bat is one of the most fun poems you'll ever read, but descriptive poems have a certain type of beauty that I really do enjoy. So in The Highwayman, you see that Bess, the landlord's daughter, kills herself for the sake of love. So what would you guys do for the people that you love?
I'm not gonna lie. I think that was kind of a dumb move on her part. It was not very smart. Like, why? Why did she shoot? Can you actually explain why she shot herself? Like, do you know? Why didn't she just fire the gun into the air or something?
So she was up and she had to struggle a whole lot just to get like one finger on the trigger. And it was kind of positioned to where the gun was pointed at her chest. And because she was so restrained, I think the only option was just to shoot herself, because if she made any more noise, because there were all like the king's men in the house, then they would like stop her before she tried. I think it was just a matter of, I mean, she had to warn him somehow in her mind, and that was just the only way she could think of. Um, I don't think it was the right decision either, because he died in the end anyway. But I mean, I respect her for trying.
Desperation, I guess, brings people to do a lot of things they wouldn't usually do.
And I guess that also leads into my other question I had, which was to what degree does love transcend the law? Because if you think about it, this man was a robber and they were trying to kill him because he was breaking the law. And so, in what she was doing, she wasn't just doing something out of love, she was doing something to protect someone who had broken the law a whole bunch of times. So, what would you guys say? I mean, I guess, what are your thoughts on that?
Mm, well, to be completely honest, I don't think I've experienced like romantic attraction yet. So it would be kind of hard for me to relate to her. Like, I don't understand how you could like somebody so much to the point where even if they did a bunch of horrible things, you'd still want to be with them and protect them. Like, what were they called? Bonnie and Clyde? Yeah. It's just, it doesn't, I can't quite wrap my head around it. Can you, Victoria?
I mean, you know the saying that's like love is blind? I feel like that's what she was like going through. She like didn't really see the whole picture because her emotions were all like in love, you know? I feel like that's what was happening. Yeah.
I think that's kind of sad though, because when two people love each other, and I guess I haven't gone through it either, but you would think that they want to be better for each other, you know? Like they want to work past their big moral flaws because that's what you do when you're in a relationship with each other, you know? Like you
Yeah.
make yourself better for the sake of the other person. And so it's just, I don't know what to think of this because in theory, she should like when you love someone, that doesn't mean that you ignore all their flaws, right? That just means that you I don't know.
Like, I feel like the logical decision in this sort of situation would be like, hey, I love you, but I can't be with you if you're going to keep doing all
Yeah.
of this immoral stuff. So if we want this to work out, then you should either wait, but they were going to kill him. It's not
Yeah.
like he goes to jail. Okay, well, if it was him going to jail, then the right move would have been to turn himself in. But okay, now I don't know. I'm not sure anymore. Meer, what do you think?
I mean, I think it also depends on how emotionally flawed the other person is. Like, if they're both flawed in the same way, then they're not gonna like push each other to fix those. They're just gonna like support. I'm not saying that in this poem she supported his robberies, but she could have just ignored it for the emotional satisfaction that she gained from him.
Yeah, I do think that Bess, the landlord's daughter, was just kind of okay with what he was doing. I don't think that's a good thing, but I think that might have been what happened because in the poem, he does, like the highwayman does say, I'm going to return with some gold or something along those lines. And she wasn't like, no, that's immoral. She was just like, okay. And so I do think that there is a moral issue with the both of them. It's weird because I don't think that she would necessarily need to worry about money as the landlord's daughter, because it's established that there are workers for this landlord. So it's not like I feel like she's not grasping for money or anything. It's just kind of a moral issue, or maybe she truly is blinded by love. But either way, it's still kind of crazy, the entire poem. All right, Victoria, which poem did you choose?
It is an untitled poem by an anonymous author, but my mom did recite this poem in first grade, so it has like a special meaning to me. So it's, if I were a bird, I would chirp like a bird. With a high little cry, I would not say a word. I would sit in my nest with my head in my chest, being a bird. That's it. Okay, so I'm gonna explain a little bit more about so my mom just recited this poem when she was in first grade, and she remembers it to this day. Like she wrote it all down for me. She remembers it all the way. So yeah.
I wonder why she remembers this poem so distinctly, because when you're in first grade, you're what, 7-ish, 6, 7? Yeah, so the fact that she remembers it is amazing. I wonder if it's I don't know, it's just it's not super flowery, eloquent language, but something about it's very it makes you feel nice. It's a pleasant poem. So I wonder if that has anything to do with why she remembers it. How does it make you guys feel?
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure she just repeated it a bunch of times and stuck in her memory. I think that's why she remembers it.
It's a nice poem, though. I agree with Joanne. It does make me very happy. I kind of wish I were a bird because it just sounds so carefree. Just chirping, sitting. That's it. What a life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the other thing was what's the underlying meaning? But
right off the bat, off the top of my head, it just seems like a very if I had the option to live a carefree life, that's just what I would do. I wouldn't worry about all of the stressful everyday things about being a human being. I would just be happy without a care in the world, is what the vibe I'm getting from this poem.
yeah.
That's a lot better than what I thought. Because I first read it and I was like, oh, this is happy. And then I was trying to think of an underlying meaning. And I was just kind of hung up on that second line, which was, I would chirp like a bird. And I thought back to the when in Rome, do what the Romans do thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's not really an underlying meaning. It's just what I thought of, I guess. But I think the cool thing about poetry is that it doesn't always have to have an underlying meaning. Like Joanne, I think your idea is something very possible for its meaning. But sometimes you could just write a poem because you're just thinking, what if I was a bird? It doesn't necessarily have to have layers or anything. It could just be something nice and simple that a first grader might like to recite again and again.
Yeah. That's what I thought. I just thought it was just someone imagining if they were a bird, So, what about your poem, Meer?
The poem I picked is called Alive, and it's by Inarenko. And to give some context, it's a sports poem about how running, how it changes her daily life and how she uses it as her coping mechanism. And it goes, when my thoughts are too heavy, my feelings too numb, when my heart is unsteady and the tears start to come, I put on my running shoes. Tonight I can't hide. I pace myself, breathing, letting go with every stride. The melody of my footsteps, the rhythms of my breath, having synchronized into nothing, a calm stillness inside my head. I'm light as a feather. I let myself fly. The world is a blur, but tonight I'm alive. What do you guys think this poem's main message is?
I feel like it's like about her love for running and like just about how like she can like release her stress when she's running and like how much she loves that.
And I'm pretty sure like everybody has something like that in their lives, right? Like it may not necessarily be something like running, but whether it's like writing or singing or something, it's like it's like an ode dedicated to something that just makes her feel better, I guess, is all I can really say.
And this is one of those descriptive poems that I had mentioned earlier, where it's not telling a story, but it's describing her coping mechanism. And I do think it's a really good poem. I love sports poems because there aren't as many of them as there are other poems. And this one's a really good one. I think that it captures what it feels like to run very well, other than just, the very basic physical feelings of running. It also captures something more emotional. And I think it's very powerfully written.
And I think that might be because, like, I don't know if it's the right word for this, but like the cadence or like the rhyme that she's using, it makes it feel very like she's like in her stride and she's running, and it's like, oh, this is my pace. This is what I love doing. This is like my thing. It's where I feel comfortable.
Yeah. I mean, I can kind of relate to this because I like running and stuff. So
Do you
yeah. Yeah, I ran
enjoy
today.
running?
I love running.
I haven't gone outside in a whole 3 weeks.
What? 3 weeks?
No, like I'm not even over exaggerating because I live with my mom and dad. They go shopping for me. I have no reason to go outside. I have been shut inside my house for a whole 3 weeks, and you look at me like this is horrific, but I am like perfectly happy. Like I feel like a fish living in like an aquarium. Like this is my element. This is where I am happy. I don't want to go outside.
Okay. I mean, you can take
Okay.
a walk.
But it's the outdoors. I don't need to go. So I'd rather just stay inside. It's nice here.
Yeah, but we haven't gotten to mosquito season yet, so you might want to go outside now because you won't be able to go outside later without getting attacked by mosquitoes.
Okay, fair point. But it's fine. I'll use my brother. Mosquitoes really like my brother for some reason, so I'll just go out with him and they'll all swarm him and I'll be safe. It'll be great. It'll be fine. Can I ask a question back to you, Meer?
Sure.
Could you like describe how you feel when you're like doing all the sports stuff to like calm yourself down? Because I genuinely just cannot relate to physical activity equals me feeling better, because usually I feel worse afterwards. So could you maybe explain a little bit?
Well, I think the number one thing is that it's a way to distract myself from the world. When I'm in a game or in a scrimmage or like in the weight room, my number one goal is to, win that game, win that tackle, win that pass.
Mhm.
It's all focused on that game, so it helps me like shut off from the rest of the world. I'm not thinking about anything else. I'm not getting updated on any news or anything. It's just me, my teammates, or if I'm by myself, me and the weight room. It just helps me just get away from everything. It helps me shut off, and then like in a game, in a practice, it's also really calming when you know that you can do like it gives you a lot of encouragement. So if you're ever feeling down, or for me at least, whenever I feel down, like if I'm writing a big paper and I'm just lost, and I go outside and I play soccer and I can like do some moves or do something that's impressive, and it helps me gain confidence in myself and in my abilities. So then when I come back, I can get started and refocus myself, because sometimes it's just you have so much emotion and you have no way to control it. And soccer helps me confine it and focus it in one direction.
I think
So
that's really cool because I mean I used to play sports and I played two very different sports. I played golf and I played volleyball, and the pacing for those two sports are very different. Like I found golf to be very relaxing, and I mean of course it's still a sport and you still have to do a whole bunch of stuff, physically and mentally and all that, but I did find it a lot more relaxing than volleyball because there's just a lot more action in volleyball. So I think it's cool that you find soccer something that you can use to refocus yourself, because I know that like the fast-paced energy of volleyball wouldn't do the same thing for me. Like my adrenaline would, skyrocket. I wouldn't be able to do the same thing with volleyball that I would with golf or how you would do with soccer.
Thank you all for joining us for the 47th.
Oops, hi, it's me Andres, the Capo Student Media Web Producer. I wrote 47th in our script, but it's actually the 46th episode, so I'm gonna take over for Meer here. Crazy what isolation does to you. I really do hope you enjoyed this week's episode. The voices you heard all belong to the psychic staff members which will take over next year's weekly podcast. Give them a round of applause for their first time running the show. I hope you tune in next year, but don't miss out on the final 4 episodes of the Penny Podcast. Let's end this the right way. See y'all next week.